Welcome to the Cleveland Tableau User Group, March 2026. Exciting times. My name is Jeremy Paytas, and I've been the group leader for quite a while, along with Mark Rogozinski. Mark, how long do we go back?
2014, 15?
Yeah, that actually sounds right.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
Because of the conference.
Yeah, so it's been a minute, yeah. The Tableau conference in Seattle is definitely, what do they call it? A core memory,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, that's from that thing. But so we got the Tableau conference, Tableau user group. Again, we've been here for a while. We were dormant for a while post-COVID. Now we're just starting to pick it back up, which is exciting. And the plan forward is to meet on a quarterly basis. Today, a few things. I want to start off by covering on the Tableau conference, which is coming up in May. So I want to make sure that we review that. I know we have some people that have been here as well. David Miller has been to previous Tableau conferences, and he's done a good job representing Progressive and the Progressive team. I myself am about 50-50 on whether or not I'll be able to go, but hopefully we do. And then also I'll be presenting on effective data storytelling. So what that is I've gathered together a lot of my different resources that I like to use for storytelling, and I'm going to go through the different approaches that are available. And I even wrote a book recently, and I'll intersperse some of that in there. It's a children's book, so hopefully it makes it a little bit more fun in terms of presenting the topic. Yeah, so before I get started, any questions, comments, concerns from anyone? No? I also like to throw in emotional outbursts because we're open here. Okay. Hello, Kathy. So to get started, I just wanted to share about, again, the Tableau conference. So it is in San Diego again. We're looking May 5th through the 7th. Again, it's a 3-day window. I think it's the first day or might be the day before, where if you want to get hands-on training, it's available at a cost. But I myself, I found it to be very beneficial. When I went, I was maybe using Tableau for about a month. And when I was there, I was actually able to get certified in the analyst category. It wasn't quite expert just yet, but I just learned so much from being in all the different sessions. Even starting out, being in some of the more advanced sessions helped me understand what's possible. So I just thought it was super helpful. Yeah, and it's a great time to meet people. I myself, I work from home, so it's a chance to socialize and also meet other people and some of your data rockstar heroes that are out there. Overall, a great event. The Iron Viz every year is a good thing. Cleveland's own Mark Bradburn is a host on it, and he does a great job as a judge. I should say, yeah, he's a judge. So his discerning taste is on display. I'm trying to think if there's anything else about the Tableau conference. Yes, David. Okay, yeah, if you guys aren't able to hear that, David was mentioning that the day before, it seems like it might be limited opportunities, but they're having free certifications made available. So you have to kind of dig through the website to find them, but yeah, be sure to check that out. Free is definitely the right price for a lot of things. I have my own personal theory about food. Food that is free tastes 20% better. So that's that. But yes, Tableau conference, again, data night out is a big deal. That's a lot of fun. I'm anxious to see what they present every year and what they promise. Selfishly, I always hope that it's a little bit more geared towards, I guess, what would you call it, like core Tableau. Previous years, it's been a lot towards Tableau Next, which is fine. I get it. That's where they want to head. But again, selfishly, I'm a Tableau core user, so I'd like to see a little more of that. Any other questions, comments, concerns about Tableau conference? No?
Definitely a transformative event if you go with that.
Yeah, like Mark mentioned, it's a transformative event. It'll help you grow and develop into you being the best analyst that you can be. So, without further ado, I would like to present trees. I went the wrong way. I'm going to present effective data storytelling. So again, I put this together on, that's kind of funny. Oh, okay. I thought it was kind of funny because here it says Jeremy Paytas, you, and I only see that. I thought it might say that up there. Okay. So again, today we're going to talk about effective data storytelling. I'm going to see if I can, oh my gosh, it went without clicking. Anyways, I did want to throw this out there. This is a shameless plug, okay? But I did release a book called Little Data Adventures. It's available on Amazon. It's very much inspired by my Tableau journey and Tableau usage. It's about data visualization. I think it's a great way for to introduce kids and adults to data literacy and data visualization. The target age range, I would say, is probably kindergarten to third grade. You can find out more at littledataadventures.com. Coming up in the next months, I do want to have YouTube tutorials on how to build in Tableau, Excel, Streamlit, whatever it might be. So those that are interested in building out their own charts and graphs can. And probably around pumpkin time, we'll have some contests. So that's that. So again, shameless plug. So today, we are going to go over the following topics. I'm going to present an overview as to why data storytelling is important, some of the considerations to take beforehand in terms of creating your presentations, different approaches. So I think you guys could probably see it on the camera, but up front, I do have a bunch of books that I typically use as inspiration for teaching or for myself in terms of how I want to structure my presentations. We'll talk about the characteristics of a good story. So that's all generated from Stephen Few, again, who's like the godfather of data visualization best practices. We'll talk about the qualities of a good data visualization, and that's from Alberto Cairo, who I highly respect. He does a great job through a journalistic lens. And then we'll talk about some tall tales. Right, so this is the tall tales aspect of it is like what to look for in data to let you know if you're being had, right, or if they might not be totally truthful about what they're representing. Okay, so here's our agenda tracker. Right now we're gonna go into our overview, but I think when we think about storytelling, right, we think about this. We think about standing in front of a fire, everyone's kind of hanging out, roasting s'mores, telling stories about things that have happened in their life, or telling ghost stories or things like that. I think it's just a great image to represent storytelling as a whole. It's something that's been passed down from generation since the beginning of man, right? It's how people learn, it's how people pass on information across generations. Okay, so why use data or data visualization for storytelling? I think this is a great example. It's called the Anscombe Quartet, and there are four different data sets, but they have very similar values. Has anyone come across this before? Yeah, David, you're familiar? Okay, all right, well, pretend like you're not. All right, so with this, they all have the same mean, right, or average of 9. They have the same variance of 11. The mean of y is 7.5, the same sample variance, the same correlation, right? So if you overlay correlation between the data points, 0.816, the linear regression line, exactly the same, and the coefficient of determination is at 0.67. Again, like the accuracy between the data set and all these summarized values are very similar. However, when we overlay what the data actually looks like, you can see that it's very different, right? So part of the appeal of utilizing data visualization is just that. We could see that, yes, this is typical linear. Here it's kind of the upward arching curve and down. Here we see it with the fourth example that it's all clustered here. at 8, and then you have one outlier way out here. Same thing here, right? This is almost a straight line, but we have that one outlier here, Y3. So using data and data visualization is a good way to illustrate your point. There's all that research that's been done on how people interpret information. Again, the whole idea of visual, you immediately want to make comparisons and you want to see where things lie. There's a whole science behind that. That's a whole different presentation. So another reason why to tell a story as an analyst is that you probably know more than others, right? So in order to be a good analyst, many of you know this, but you need to have a good balance of the hard skills and the soft skills, right? You need to be the subject matter expertise. You need to have the business acumen. You need to have a good, solid understanding of math and statistics, along with the data and technical skills. And then on the soft skills, you have to also be able to problem solve and think critically. You have to have a storytelling component to your job and the way that you behave. Collaboration, no one is working in a silo. You have to work with others and understand how to share information. The one thing I like too is, I don't know, for me as an analyst, I have this innate curiosity, right? If you give me a data set, I just want to dive in and figure out how it works, what's the level of detail, what kind of stories does it have to tell. So we'll get into this a little bit later too, but we're going to go into the exploratory versus the explanatory, the data exploration, the finding the insights. Again, finding that call to action and then sharing that knowledge. So how do you share that with other people in a good fashion? Okay. So I thought this was great. I just picked this up recently on LinkedIn, but Brent Dykes, who wrote one of the books there, which is Data Storytelling, he did this just to show the difference between an average analyst and a strong analyst across these different dimensions. Don't you love the Tableau speak and presentations? But having that attention to detail, earning people's trust, the curiosity to dig deeper. Greg Wrench, again, who's one of my mentors, I'll never forget when I started out as an analyst, he said, what made me an effective analyst, meaning himself, was always asking the next question. So even though you were asked to find a certain thing, dig deeper, find out what the next question is, and try to answer that yourself, and then you could answer that during the meeting, right, or during the presentation. Domain knowledge is huge, right? So actually learn the business and learn the way the business works. That's probably the one tangible thing that you can have by staying with a company over time is kind of that tribal knowledge, and improving your business acumen and business domain knowledge is essential. Judgment, so being able to be trusted and being able to identify what matters most. Showing initiative, so proactively try to identify what the problems may be and how to overcome them, instead of being reactive. I think that's a key differentiator nowadays as being an analyst as well as a consultant, right? Be proactive and try to help people instead of just reacting. Again, creativity, exploring new and different approaches, and then communication, ensuring that the insights resonate. And what that means is practicing. I'll show some different techniques for how to do that, but practicing, get buy-in beforehand, and also find your champion is another way to ensure that those insights resonate throughout. All right. And then finally, Brent Dykes actually had a great example. I didn't do the best job of using these visualizations, but there was a study done where there was an average of students that did presentations, and they only had 1 minute to make the presentation, and 9 out of 10 were statistics heavy, meaning lots of numbers were being thrown out there, and only 1 was told through a story. Meaning, again, it had a beginning, middle, end, it had a structure, it had an approach for storytelling. So afterwards, only 5% remembered the individual statistics that were very statistical heavy, where 63% remembered the story. So I use these two visualizations because the top one, I think it's easy to kind of go through a table and say, okay, well, our profit in January was 7,000, then it dropped down to February, then it went up in March, where visually you're able to see, okay, our overall sales trend has increased over time, our profit has increased over time, however, our profit ratio is going down. And in seeing that visually as opposed to, again, just stats heavy is a great way to share that and present that information. Any comments so far about, has anyone come across anything else that, why storytelling is effective?
People remember the visuals that, more than they do the numbers.
Yeah, yeah.
Sticks out in the brain.
Yeah, and I think it just enables easy comparison. Okay, so let's talk about considerations. There are many. So Nancy Duarte does a fantastic job. Again, I'm gonna tout her book and her website. Resonate is a great book. She has a YouTube series, which is phenomenal, TED Talks and all of that. She's actually presented, I know I saw her like 2 or 3 times at the Tableau conference, which is awesome. But consider your audience. And this is something I don't think I've really thought of before. I think when you present, right, you think about yourself as being the hero in terms of your presentation, but you're really not. In this case, the audience is their hero, and you're the Yoda, right? You're the one who's mentoring them, trying to share your information, try to share your knowledge and impart that information, try to help instruct them on what they don't know and the actions that they can take to make it better. Personally, I'm not a huge Star Wars guy, which is kind of crazy because I have 2 daughters that are born on May 4th, and it's like, May the 4th be with, I get, Okay, but yeah, there's a lot of good Star Wars stuff out there. So Nancy Duarte, she does a good job. There's more to audience that I'll cover in a bit. Another consideration is your call to action. So what do you want your audience to do? So based on your insights and expertise, what action do you want them to take to make whatever it is better? Or to stop doing, right? Because the call to action could be like, hey, let's stop doing this because we're wasting money. But it's important to state your desired end state and also identify who is responsible for taking that action, right? Is it you? Are you asking other people to do things? Is it another team? Call to action, big deal. So this one I found kind of interesting as well. This is called the iceberg of ignorance. And I was thinking about this differently in terms like what is known. But the iceberg of ignorance is kind of a new concept to me at least. Is anyone familiar with this? Mark is? Okay.
It's been a while, but yeah.
But yeah, I mean, essentially what it's saying is, the people, the staff knows 100% of the problems, right? Because they're dealing with it every day, they see it, and then it goes up to the next level, and 74% of the problems are known to the team leaders, and then 9% is known to the team managers, but only 4% is known to executives. So I also think about this through a different lens of the iceberg, which is the depth of knowledge and understanding the audience and what their depth of knowledge of the topic that you're presenting is. So a lot of times you're down here, right, in terms of what you know. You feel like you know 100% of what's going on, but does that executive know what's going on? Probably not, right? So you have to think about what level of detail you're presenting at in order to get the information across. So the other thing too, and I've been to blame on this just as much as anyone, I could think of a time when I thought I presented the coolest looking graphic that you've ever seen. Like, I did such a good job. I used all these different Tableau techniques. It was so impressive. But then when it came to like share this information, and they're like, what are you showing me? This is just too complex. Has anyone else fallen into that trap, Mark?
Several times.
Yeah, it's easy. It's easy to fall into that trap because you're excited about it. You've done the exploratory analysis. But again, if they're not following where you're at, or if their knowledge is above, is at the tip of the iceberg, it makes it challenging to get your point across. So Brent Dykes also has a nice, these different elements, and the thing I like about it is the combinations. So you have your narrative, you have your visuals, and you have your data. However, if you look at the intersection of the narrative and the data, that's the explain portion. So that helps you explain what's going on to your audience. You have the narrative and the visuals, which is the engage portion, again, of your narrative. And then you have the visuals and the data, which is made to enlighten. All of that combined brings about change. I just think this is a really cool architecture in terms of thinking, how can I invoke change? Using these three elements are the way to do it, or a way to do it. The other thing I like that Brent kind of brought to the forefront for our, especially for our Latin folks, I think that's Latin, right? Ethos, logos, or is that Greek? I don't know. I don't know either. I probably should have looked that up beforehand. But yes, ethos relates to credibility or being believed, right? Your ability to believe in that person or what you're being told. Logos relates to logic or reason. Pathos relates to our emotion. Telos is the purpose, and kairos is timeliness. So these are things that, as a storyteller, you hope to invoke on your audience. And you'll see this not only in storytelling, you also see a lot of this in marketing, right? I think a lot of this was storytelling. I love marketing by chance. I love advertising. I think it's, storytelling and marketing go hand in hand quite a bit because you're trying to appeal to people. You're trying to be persuasive. And a lot of these also play into the marketing realm. Okay, so Cole Naflick also talks about exploratory versus explanatory. So you need to consider, how deep do you need to get? Do you need to explain how you got there, right? A lot of times, like I mentioned before, the complex, excited analyst part of me would love to nerd out and be like, hey, here's how I got here, and here's how I started, and here's what I did, and I'm great. But all that really matters is, at the end of the day, that specific call to action, or what I hope to pass off as an insight. And again, there's different approaches to doing that, but it's a good question to ask yourself beforehand. And like I mentioned before, asking yourself what the next question might be. So here's the difference between exploratory and explanatory. And Cole Naflick does a great job of having that as an example at the end. So exploratory is, again, what we do on a daily basis. It's the data mining. I'd say that this is probably about, we have the Pareto principle as an analyst, which is 80% of your time is working with data, trying to find that nugget, trying to find that that insight that you're going to tell a story with. So it's the data mining, the limited guidance. It's exploring different paths and strategies. It's also using distributions, re-expressions, and variances, and other things to help uncover the unknown. There are times when I've built exploratory reports to kind of hand off to the end user, and usually what that is utilizing parameters and filters to enable them to kind of make their own story. So there is a place for exploratory reporting, for sure. And I think as data literacy grows, we do see a lot more of exploratory reporting. On the explanatory side, it's summarization, it's guided analysis, it's heavy use of annotations or callouts to talk about when, like, why we see this big spike in our line chart or why we see this big dip in our line chart. It's a focused use of charts, so we might use one summarization, and then we're going to drill down to help further tell the story and tell detail. And it's the explaining of finding two relevant hypotheses, which are your pearls, right? So we have 100 oysters that we've shucked through, and then finally we get to our two pearls that we want to hang on to and pass on as insights. So I'm just curious, like, typically, are you, those that build reports, are you building exploratory or explanatory type reports, or some combination?
I think it depends on the audience, right?
That's a good one.
So if you deal with the executives, they want to get a certain, they want to know, are we good or bad? And
Right.
with RCA, if you're an analyst in the weeds, you build an exploratory tool that drills left, right, north, south, east, west.
Yeah, that's nice, Mark. No, I think because you're going to tee me up for what's coming down the pike here. Awesome. Anyone else willing to share? More exploratory, explanatory?
I would say our team uses a pretty equal balance of both. We serve as external consultants for nonprofits and government agencies, and so Mark was saying it depends on the audience, but we do both.
Okay. Yeah, and that might actually be a good, yeah, it depends on your audience. Yeah, that tends to be true. Awesome. So another one is your presentation, right? So eye focus. What I mean by that is like finding someone in your room, finding a point in your room where you're going to make eye contact throughout your presentation to help deliver a good presentation. The other thing is practice, practice, practice. So if you can't tell, I haven't practiced this that much. I had a chance, I was worried more about the deck than really practicing and delivering, but I do hope later down the pike I'll do this again, and it'll be a little bit more smoother. But also in your presentation, it's also important to find a champion. And what I mean by that is find someone that, you know, if it's a big, important presentation, find someone that is going to be your champion. So that means letting them in ahead of time on the insights or your findings. So then when you have the meeting, you might have someone that can help back your story or is familiar with what's going on. So it's kind of like an interesting technique to get buy-in. And then again, getting buy-in. You need to be persuasive and you need to try to get buy-in either beforehand or during the meeting in order for action to take place.
Jerry,
Yeah.
I was just going to say, like, I love your slide, especially since you're presenting eye contact, you know, it's obviously something that's there, but for people that are doing like Zoom calls for their presentations and others, it's more about your voice. I found like if you're monotone during a call, you may put people to sleep.
Yeah.
Engaged, right? So if you're making eye contact as you're doing now, you have your audience engaged. But if you're on a call, you don't get that eye contact. You know, you can try if you're sharing your camera, but I think your voice carries a lot into that presentation, that story that you're trying to tell. You have the focus.
Yeah, that's a good point. For those of you that might not have been able to hear Mark, his point was your voice and your inflection and the way that you speak is very important, especially during Zoom calls. And to me, that's one of the hardest parts, especially during COVID, right? A lot of people were working remotely. Not a lot of people sharing their screens. So it was I'm definitely a person that likes to engage, make eye contact. I feed off that. I need to know how I'm doing. So I teach at Baldwin Wallace over the summer, and that was by far the hardest part is I just almost want to demand to students like, show your face. You know, I don't want to like not present to anyone. But anyways, you guys might recognize the guy on the right from memes. He's like I don't know. I see him all the time. I just thought it was a funny thing. So the distribution is also a huge consideration. And it's something that a lot of people I'm not sure think about. So Cole Naflick brought this up and she drew this little picture and I think it's great, right? It says the amount of control you have and then the level of detail needed. So it goes from low to high and then at the bottom, your X here is the slide you bent. Again, on low to low. So if you're presenting and you're presenting to people, you have high control of what you're sharing. However, you also need to take into consideration your audience. Again, in that case, it's a written document or an email. So you also need to be aware of the way that's being interpreted or the way it might be shared. So the level of detail in a print off or document might need to be more, right? You might need to annotate and be more descriptive because you're not there to present. So that's the big takeaway there. Another thing is it being recorded? Again, the reason why I bring that up is it can be shared, right? That recording can be shared, or it might be shared with others. And then, is it going to be printed off? Because things can be printed off and taken out of context. One of the things I see quite a bit, especially on the Tableau front, is, hey, that's great, but can you export that to Excel, right? And then, the controlling part of me is like, what are you going to do with that? Are you going to create your own narrative? Are you going to create your own story? So to me, that's always something it's that fine balance, right?
Yeah. I was just going to say that if one of my customers tells me that they're doing that, then I failed as a developer from developing the proper data story that fits their needs.
Right.
You go to spreadsheet level detail because you're trying to validate my opinion, but if you're using it to create pivot tables and other things, then your dashboard didn't deliver on the promise of answering the questions that they answered.
Yeah. I know that it's not meant as an insult, but I'm insulted. I'm like, oh, why don't you say that, right? Or like, how can I help me help you?
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So that's an important piece there. All right. Any other considerations that I might have missed in terms of presenting? Any other considerations that you might take? I think I probably could have spent a little bit more time on audience. Audience is just so important. Okay, well, let's talk about approaches. So the most basic one is your traditional story arc, right? And we've seen this everywhere. This is, you have the beginning, you have the rising action, you have the falling action, and you have a resolution. Again, throughout that story arc, you talk about the why, how, what, who, when, what, and what if. And I'll get into more detail about that later. And examples include pretty much every story ever written at this point. But the traditional story arc, right, you have your beginning. This is the world of your story before it changes. There's an incident, something occurs, and you have a hero that will lead and take charge and make change. And you talk about the forces that begin to work and actually work against you, right? You have your antagonist and your protagonist. The tables turn in a big way at the midpoint, and then you have the falling action. The second half of the story, the antagonist pushes back against the change. And then the climax is where opposing forces duel, and there's a clear winner and loser. And then you have the end, which is the story after the world changes. So I think we're all familiar with, it's ingrained into us, traditional story arc. The one thing I actually found kind of interesting as I was looking at that traditional story arc was on this Go Narrative website. They actually looked at popular stories and looked at the hero and on like a good to bad scale of how that is. And if you look at Star Wars, it's almost like the inverse story arc, right? So Star Wars is in the middle there. Things start off pretty, I guess, somewhat bad. And again, I'm not great at Star Wars, so you guys got to keep me honest here. But things start kind of bad, then they get good, and then it gets really bad, and then it gets really good, right? And then Alien's interesting too. It starts kind of good. There's stuff out in space, and it gets progressively worse for Ridley all the way through until like late in Act 3, and then it gets better. And it must not have gotten that great because there's an Alien 2. And then in Cinderella, it's all over the place, right? She meets her prince, they go to the ball. Oh no, I have to go and I lost my shoe. And then the awful life returns, then the prince comes back and they live happily ever after. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting thing too. I've never come across that before in terms of looking at it from the hero's perspective. Brent Dykes takes that a step further, and it's more so around the traditional storytelling arc. So you have your setting, you're talking about the background, you're talking about the current state, and then you have the insights that reveal deeper insights into the problem or the opportunity. You have an aha moment, and then you have the falling, again, that falling resolution. You have the solution and next steps, and then the audience knows more than they did before, and hopefully they're ready to act. I think a great example of this is Hans Rosling's presentation. If you go to YouTube and you type in best presentation ever using data, Hans Rosling is going to come to the top. Is everyone familiar with him? No? Oh, please do it. Oh, he is so good. Whenever I present, he just does a good job, and he uses humor in a great way, and he gets really into it. During the TED Talk, he's like, and this is like back in like the early 2000s, so like data visualization was like a big deal for it to like actually move, and it's like animated, and he's like, oh, we have our third world countries down here, and they're going up, and they're going up, and they're going, and I don't know, he just gets so into it. So I'll talk about him a bit, but please check out his YouTube. Cole Naflick talks about the who, what, and how. So think about who your audience is, and not only the audience, but think about you, the audience, and your relationship, and that helps define the who. The what is what you need them to do. So again, call to action. If it's not clear what that call to action is, she recommends encouraging discussion, right? What are the next best steps that we can take? And open it up, right? Have a brainstorming session. She also recommends using action words. She had like words from A to Z. I pulled out some that I thought were pretty impactful. Agree, I believe, let's engage, let's encourage, and learn. And then the how. So how will the data help? What data is available to help your point? And then don't forget to overlook counterpoints. So another approach down the road, I'm going to talks about those counterpoints. But it's almost like getting hit with a blindside punch, right? Like you have this presentation and you're really excited and you have this information that you know about, and you go ahead and in the middle of your presentation, someone's like, well, have you thought about this? Or why don't you look at this data? And I'm like, oh my God. Again, it's like a gut punch, or it's like getting blindsided during a meeting. It kind of throws everything off and it helps, and it derails. So again, don't forget to overlook those counterpoints or counterpunches, whichever way you want to look at it. So I recently have come across Miro. Do we have any Miro users? It's Miro. I got to tell you, I absolutely love it. It's a great way to mind map. It's a great way to work with others concurrently. It also just is a great way to get your ideas down on paper. And when I went to write my book, I was pleased to see that in Miro, they have like a storytelling template that you could utilize. And they actually broke it down into this. And these icons don't mean anything. Sorry, they just don't. But the why is, what are the key issues and drivers forcing this change? What are the things that need to be changed? How? What activities must be done for this change to happen? Who are the individuals or groups involved in the change? And I like this one a lot. And I think this is a good point to bring up during our presentation is, what if? So what will the future be like if this change is successful? Or what will happen if there's no change, right? So presenting those two things provide two different alternatives and two different realities that can happen. And then when will the action need to take place in order to be successful? So I took this a step further, and you can kind of see this is for the first book, kind of the path I went to. And this, again, this is Miro. Not everything's filled out. However, I did go through the why, which is what are the key issues and drivers forcing this change. So I identified the incident that sparks the adventure. So right out the gate, they receive a flyer for the county fair about a pumpkin contest. And then what are the things that must be changed? There's different goals. There's the biggest pumpkin, there's the tallest pumpkin, there's the prettiest pumpkin that they're going to enter into. How are they going to do that? They're going to prepare the yard, they're going to prepare the garden. They're going to measure the results as they go through. And then what if, I didn't fill out the what if, but who, right? Who are the key players that are going to invoke this change and things like that. So I just wanted to share this because I think Miro is just a great tool in terms of laying out your ideas. It's just sticky notes that you can drag and drop. So good stuff there. Has anyone come across Robert Coursera? No? So it must have been a while ago because this is from 2017, but I saw him at a Tableau conference a while ago, and he had a great presentation approach, which is claim, fact, and conclusion. And I think that it's even-handed, especially in this example. So the thesis is what's really warming the world, right? And I know this is a polarizing topic, or it can be. However, what he did is state that you have your claim, and then you have the facts. So yes, there is the orbit, there's solar, and there's volcanoes, which are natural factors into global warming. But then there's also land use, ozone, aerosols, and greenhouse gases, which are the human factors. And then overall, all factors. So the thing I like about this is talking about how there might be counterpoints to consider. I think this is a good way to do that. Make sure that you have both sides here. So Robert Coursera, if you want to check out more on him, there's a link down there. And I like this as well. So Naflick also brings up the 3-minute high impact talk. And this is to really focus on the essentials, get to the heart of the matter. I equate this to an elevator pitch. So if you're struggling with what to focus on, like let's say you have this great big presentation and you want to ensure that your main points get across, boil it down into a 3-minute version of that, and that will help you focus on what's important. But yeah, I like thinking of this as like an elevator pitch, quick and concise. And then Nancy Duarte also has this in, it's kind of neat because Naflick recommends Duarte and this approach, which is the big idea. So being able to articulate your big idea in a single sentence that articulates your point of view, conveys what's at stake, and again, is just one complete sentence. So this is even drilling down further from that 3-minute approach to just one single thing. And Nancy Duarte has, again, this is from like 2014, but it still rings true. And I just saw a YouTube video where she was talking about how she came across this approach. She looked at presentations in famous speeches by presidents, by world leaders, by business leaders, and she really highlighted Martin Luther King and Steve Jobs and the way that they spoke. So Martin Luther King was the I Have a Dream, and Steve Jobs was for the Apple iPhone launch. So let's take into example Steve Jobs. So Steve Jobs at the time was talking about what is. So what is the current state of the mobile phone? He talked about BlackBerry and how the BlackBerry, right, it's got these tactile buttons and you have to push it and all this. And then he talked about what could be, right? We could have a phone that has no buttons and you can slide up and down and it's real easy to use and it fits in the palm of your hand and everything's reachable by your thumb. And then he talked about what is again, and then what is, and then what could be. So it's this cycle that kind of looks like a snake. And then finally, at the very end, you'll see the call to action and the new bliss. So here's the iPhone, right? It does everything you want it to do, and it's heading in this new direction. You could do the same thing with Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech. Here's the current state, here's where we should be. Here's the current state, here's where we can be. To finally, his call to action, which is for civil rights. I find that one to be pretty amazing. Another one is, Naflick talks about storyboarding, which I think is just natural. Again, this is an opportunity to brainstorm, edit, and get feedback. The other thing I like about it is it's agile, meaning that you could change the arrangement. So another approach, which I'll talk about next, is doing just that. Oh no, it's not coming next. But I also want to highlight the storyboarding example because this is what I used, again, beginning, rising action, falling action, and resolution. This is what I used to write the book, the Little Data Adventures book. And what I wanted to highlight was in the beginning, right, I have the setting, the characters, the key issues, and then the rising action, what are the decision points? The falling action, they put their plan into action, are they going to win? And then the resolved problems. Do they win? Don't they win? It doesn't matter because pumpkins make pie. So that's pretty handy there. Okay, so I wanted to highlight this. And I don't know, I couldn't find anyone to really cite for this. But one of the approaches I find to be very effective is to lead with your call to action because that's the most important thing. So instead of going through, okay, I'm going to paint this picture of where we're currently at and what might be, the falling action to the resolution, or the other way, the Duarte way, which is what is and what might be. It's like, hey, just start off with what you want to happen. And the reason why I find this very effective is you'll see this in children's books quite a bit. Again, with the children's book I wrote, it's like you're thrown right into the action. And the reason for that is knowing your audience, right? They don't have the patience for the setting, the build up and all that. Much with busy executives, they're not going to have the patience for the timing. They're like, what do you want from me, right? So a few examples that I've come across recently. I saw the movie Sinners. It starts with the ending. Sorry for the spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, but it does. And it's really cool because you wonder how they got there, right? It kind of puts it in the back of your mind, man, he's in rough shape. How did he get in that state? And then it starts the story from the beginning. Another one is Memento. Has anyone heard of Memento? Yes, no? So it's an early Christopher Nolan film, and the reason I bring it up is it's told backwards. Not literally, not like each sequence is told backwards. So you start with the ending, and then you have another sequence which is just before that, and then it takes you to the very beginning, which again is kind of a cool technique. There's even memes around it, which is like the record scratch, the freeze frame, and the yep, that's me. You might be wondering how I got here. And then again, it goes back to the beginning. I share this. This is a movie called Premium Rush. I was thinking about showing it. I'm probably not going to. You guys can check it out if you want. But essentially, it starts with him flying through the air, hitting the ground, a car slamming on his brakes, and then what it does, I might show you. Do you guys want to see it? Yeah? All right, let's see if I can get this to go. No. Okay, we're not going to see it. But anyways, the data aspect of that was it goes through, you see him swerving in and out of traffic. He's a bike messenger. And the cool thing about it is it kind of starts with this map view, and you see him as like an arrow, and then it goes down into him, and you see him weaving in and out. So it's kind of cool. All right. Anyways, so Jonathan Drummy, I was chatting with him about this presentation, and he's like, I don't know if you've ever come across the one I did for Tableau a few years ago, but this speaks to the analyst in all of us, I hope, and I think. It's the empower approach. So you'll see the complexity on the Y scale there. It goes up over time, and you're initially exposed to the data, right? So the whole idea there is you want to get comfortable with the data. You're trying to get a clear picture of the data. Again, the explanatory, exploratory aspect where you're like, oh man, like what's that one insight I'm looking at? I'm going to do some comparisons for context. Then you get into explore and you build out your exploratory dashboards. And then finally you get into the explain aspect. So what action do I want them to take? What do I want them to do? But again, I think he does a great job. I think you'll see here, like my next slide, I was like, there's a lot of approaches here. Like, am I going to use all of these, one of these? When should I use these? So I built this handy little data visualization. And look at that effect. That was kind of slick, wasn't it? Wow. All right. So on our X, we have the amount of detail. And on our Y, we have the amount of time. So I wasn't sure really how to put this, but in the first bucket to the far left, I put executives with little time. So the two approaches there might be the big idea, right? That one sentence, what's that one thing you're hoping to get across? Or the 3-minute presentation. So I have 3 minutes, I have an elevator pitch. What can I say to them to help persuade them in that short amount of time? Then most audiences are going to be familiar with the story arc, the leading with the CTA, the data story arc, the who, what, how approach, the storyboarding, and then finally, what is and what could be, which is Duarte's. And then that, again, that's for most audiences and probably most presentations. For peers and experts, I think the claim, fact, and conclusion and the expose, explore, and explain approaches are most appropriate. You're going to have a lot of time and you're going to have a lot of detail in both of those. Any questions about that or comments about all these different approaches?
Yeah. I think you hit all of it. You made me think of a seminar I went to with a graphics designer. And she said you have 30 seconds before you lose your audience.
Yeah.
And she's like, what do they walk away with? So all those could apply, or everyone's kind of an executive to an extent, right? You have time is limited, so. But to your point, I think it's the audience piece of it. It's their where do they fit?
Yeah. Yeah.
And can you read your audience when you're developing it out? As you're telling that story. So.
Yeah. Have any of you utilized any of these approaches and found them to be helpful, or maybe without knowing it? No? Yeah? I'm trying to think when I present. Trying to explain your business, again, I'm in consulting, so trying to explain your business, I tend to go to the 3-minute one, right? Like, what's our elevator pitch? How do we persuade someone in a conversation that you should check us out? The other thing, too, is I look at marketing quite a bit, and on YouTube, you'll see you have a very short window in order to retain someone. It's so easy to click away. It's so easy to click off. So you have to engage them right away, or you'll lose them. And then it's even worse with YouTube Shorts. It's 3 seconds. You have 3 seconds to make an impression, and then people swipe away. So again, it depends on the audience and it depends on the application, but hopefully these approaches resonate with you. All right. We doing okay in terms of health and well-being? Okay. All right. I wanted to touch on characteristics of a good story. And again, this is derived from Stephen Few. And I'm just going to talk through these pretty quick. But I do like this quote from Da Vinci: "Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication." And I agree. Again, I went back. I had super complex dashboards, just really pushing the limits of Tableau. And you'll be surprised how many, I'm back in bar charts bar charts and line charts, and it gets 90% of the way there. And I think the main reason is it's simple, people understand it, and people, I'm actually surprised at how many people, even with scatter plots, have a hard time picking that up. And I'm not faulting anyone, it's just, again, the less complex, the easier it is to digest. Another characteristic is seamless. This seems somewhat obvious, but your words and pictures and graphics need to be seamless in the way that you display them. And that's a terrible graphic, and I apologize, but it says, charts and graphs are the visual shorthand of the soul. So some deep words by Edward Tufte. Informative. So you want to reveal facts that are unknown, reveal the unexpected, and you want to make them to stick. So again, harkening back to the story aspect of it, the story really resonated with people, and they were able to recant the numbers that were shared as opposed to just straight up statistics. And I made that. I made that with the playground thing on a Mac. The other characteristic for a compelling story is true. And I think that we find there's something in us that's like, oh, if that's based on a true story, that kind of makes it cooler. And I think of some examples like the movie 127 Hours, which is based off of a true story. It starred James Franco. There's a ton of examples there. But again, as you validate and back up what you're sharing with evidence, it also shows integrity, it builds trust, and always be sure to drop your sources and to name your resources that you utilize. As you'll see, Stephen Fuse at the bottom there. Another characteristic is contextual, and I think this is probably one of the most powerful forms of persuasion, and we see this a lot, right? How are we doing this year compared to the previous year, compared to the year before that? How are we doing in our region compared to other regions? How are we doing in this channel compared to another channel? So contextual comparisons are very persuasive and powerful. I can't remember who did this. I pulled this off at Tableau Public though, and it looks like it's Klaus Schulte, or Schulte. And it just does a really nice job of each quadrant, small multiple, the trellis is popping, right? You have the color of what's being shared, and you're easily able to discern the difference between those different cross sections. Familiar. So again, knowing your audience, express in terms that are familiar and relevant, and boil down to points, but don't water down unnecessarily. So this is part of that human connection and also relating to your audience. So if that audience, I tend to, in my mind, I'm thinking about TLAs, also known as three-letter acronyms. Right? If you're working inside a business and everyone knows what those mean, right? Whether it's ROI or I don't know, there's a whole slew of them. But if your audience doesn't know that, then you have to explain it, right? You have to explain it in familiar terms to what they're doing. It also helps to make things concrete. And I think this is just a very cool way to share that. So there was a Makeover Monday project where it was, what if the world was 100 people? And in this visualization done by Divya, there's 77 people out of 100 have a place to shelter. 86 people out of 100 have the ability to read and write. 75 have phones. 63 have adequate nutrition. 93% don't have a college degree. 48 live on less than $2 a day. 13 don't have safe water. And 70 don't have access to internet. So when you put things in terms like that, I think it really simplifies what you're trying to say, as opposed to saying, you know, I don't know, throwing out a number in the billions, which is what these actually are. Another example is saying that someone has a net worth of $53 billion. And you're like, okay, well, that seems like a lot, but put it into a concrete example, that equals the annual salary of 1.7 million workers in the US. Like that's insane. Another good example is I have a friend whose son does, he did a little like video of insects. And he was talking about like a cricket and how high a cricket can jump. And he's like, you know, the way a cricket jumps, he's like, that's like half a football field. So if you were a human and you jumped half a football field, that's how far a cricket jumps in their scale. And I was like, man, that's a great way to have a complex, a potentially complex thought, instead of putting it in millimeters or whatever it might actually be, put it in human terms. So make it personal. And I like this illustration because I feel this way. When you're an adult, but you feel like a kid faking your way through life, I think imposter syndrome is a good thing. If you've read the book, Think Again, you'll see it as in a positive light as opposed to a negative. But it's something that enables you to relate to your audience directly. It's part of the human experience and empathy, right? It enables you to put other people in your shoes. Put yourself in other people's shoes. Yeah, that one. And emotional, right? So I already brought up Inside Out earlier, and you'll see this from a marketing and advertising point of view as well, but utilize videos and photographs to get your point across, different perspectives, playing on FOMO or fear of missing out. A lot of times you'll see that in marketing, right? Act now, or you'll miss out. And then examples, very good examples, are PETA and March of Dimes, right? Their advertisements are very impactful in terms of their use of music, the story they tell. It's playing on that human emotion. And actionable. Of course, make it easy for the audience to respond. Try to lay out the foundation of where you want them to head. Suggest practical ways to build a bridge between the world that is and the world that you desire. And sequential. So Robert Rouse, who's actually one of my teammates at Action, I was looking through his Tableau public today, and I could not believe he built this in Tableau on the right. And it's a great example of a story, right? So it's a comic, and it's sequential in the way that we read naturally, at least English language, right? We read top left to bottom right. It tells a story as you go through. And he broke down different areas. So, you know, there's a conflict at the top. They found a problem with tables in the East, which those of us that use the Superstore data know that that is an issue. Then they talk about it. There's the drill in. There's the answer. They figured it out. There's a call out to Francois, which was the Tableau CEO a while ago. But again, I think he does a great job here of illustrating a sequential visualization. All right. So we're going to talk about qualities. Qualities of a good visualization. So being truthful, and this is Alberto Cairo, and he wrote an entire book about how to lie with charts and data, and it's phenomenal. But here's a good example. Okay, so let's take a look at this, and I want you guys to tell me what might be up with this. It's not just one thing either. There's a couple of things. Is there anything fishy?
There's too much to read.
Too much to read? Oh. Yeah, that's one. Yeah, and I mean, looking at this on the surface, right, you'd think less regulation means more industry investment. So, hey, we should just deregulate everything. Okay. Well, let's check out what the reality is. Okay. The truthful answer is that there is no single answer. And if we go back to this image, it also plays back to coloring, right? So even this being red, like instinctually, we're like, oh, that's bad. That's a bad thing. The other thing too is looking at the years. There is a gap, and then there's also, if I remember correctly, they're not the right number of years, right? So that's 3 years. That's 4 years. Yeah. So it's not. And hey, where's that y-axis? Right? Nowhere to be seen. Terrible. Okay, now here's the right way. We have the y-axis. We see that. We see every year accounted for down here on the x. We have more of a picture that back here, there was regulation that was done back here in '92, Cable Television Protection and Competition Act. Then there was deregulation here in '96. So the other thing that also occurred is the internet was invented, and the internet came about. So that also played a huge factor in cable industry infrastructure. You know, back then it was trying to get fiber optic lines and all that hooked up. So again, it should be truthful. It should be obvious, but another one is functional. So looking at and this is we've seen this time and time again, but pie charts on the right. Pie charts do get a bad rap. Again, I've come full circle. There's a time and place. Oh man, I did a dad joke there, right? Full circle, pie, okay, sorry. Okay, so on the left, music preferences between '94 and 2014, it's hard to tell what changed. A better approach would be the slope chart on the right, and you could easily see that there's an increase in hard rock. Samba is missing out, it's moving down, but it's just easier to read. It's very, very functional. It should be beautiful. On the left here, we see, again, just a lot of unnecessary information being plotted. There's no need for there to be the shapes on there. There's really no need for the legend, and there's no need for the row dividers there. It's much nicer on the right. It's just beautiful. It's clean. You can see it. Everything's accurately labeled, and he did a good job of instead of using a legend, having to look left and right. It's at the tail end of the chart itself. It should be insightful. So I thought this was a good example. I can't remember where I found this, but of seeing how much the prices have actually changed in the past 10 years at McDonald's. So a quarter pounder with cheese meal went up 122%. It went from $5.39 all the way to $11.99. 10-piece chicken nugget meal, $5.99 up to $10.99. So I think just, again, I found this insightful. It's good to have the context of what it was before and what it is now, and across multiple items. And I also like the use of the ketchup and mustard, although I probably wouldn't have used red, knowing that there's connotation associated with red. And then finally, enlightening. So I found this to be very enlightening and somewhat heartbreaking, I'm not gonna lie. But this is who we spend time with across our lives. And you'll see early on, you know, when you're 15, you spend a lot of time with your parents still, parents, sibling, and family. Then you become independent as time goes on, so that goes down. You spend more time with your friends in your later teens and early 20s, and then that tends to drop off too. Your partner, if you have one, tends to increase over time. I'm sorry. It increases, obviously, when you have a partner throughout your life. Children, you'll see that goes down right after having an empty nest. Coworkers you spend a lot of time with consistently up until you retire. And then your time alone. Unfortunately, that increases as we as we get older. But there's lessons to be had, right? Family time is limited, so you should cherish it. Friend time is limited, so prioritize the real ones. Partner time is significant, so never settle. Children time is precious, so be present. Coworker time is high, so find energy. And alone time is the highest, so love yourself. So anyways, I just found this to be a really compelling visualization and enlightening. Brent Dykes then does a good job of identifying common types of story points. And I'm just going to highlight each one of these. So if you're thinking about in your presentation, what's a good way to be persuasive? Using the data visualization is showing change over time, showing relationships, showing the intersection of 2 points, projecting forward. So here's where we're at, here's what the future might look like. Compare and contrast. So again, year over year, whether it's ranking, drilling down, starting with your bands and drilling down into detail. Zooming out, taking a look at the big picture. Clustering, so identifying things that might be alike, and then also looking at the outlier, the thing that's not like everything else. So if you're struggling in terms of your story, that might be a good way to view it. Finally, I want to cover off on tall tales. So again, go back to the fish example. I caught a fish that was this big, but in reality it was only this big. I'm a fisherman, so I do fall into this category. But why? Why do people do this? Part of it is advertising. We'll see that some people have biases that creep in. They have self-interest. Some people purposely want to be deceitful. English. Or you want to make yourself look better or tell a story that's more compelling than it actually is. So back to the fish story. All right, so what's up with this visualization? And you can tell how old it is because BlackBerry is being advertised. Right, right, there's no zero. So if we were to take this on the surface, we're like, oh my God, his velocity. Exactly, and it's not, right? If anything, it's a fraction. So if we were telling the truth here, you wouldn't even see the difference, right? Another example, and I just came across this one yesterday. I thought this was really cool. So you take one look at this and you see the red, and you're like, oh my gosh. China's poverty rate has declined while the US trend has stagnated, or it looks like it might have even gone up. So this is the percent of the population living on $3 per day. And you can see in 1990, 80% of China was living on $3 per day. Where now, that looks very small. We don't know what it is, but it looks near zero or at zero. Now, if I was to take this on the surface, I'd look at the United States and be like, holy cow, we're at 80%, 90%, whatever it might be, but that's not the case, right? Now, granted, they show that there's a different y-axis. Just innately looking at it, you have this visceral reaction that you're like, what's going on? But it's the scale is really from 0.0 to 1.0, so it's still very small. So again, that comparison, I guess I can kind of see why they did it, but it's not overly truthful in my book. A couple other ones, the US GDP on the left, it looks like it's falling off a cliff. It's really not. Again, the old y-axis trick. Granted, it is going down, but not as bad as we see there. And then on the right, if you were to take this on the surface, you would think that if you smoked more cigarettes, your life expectancy would be better. And so what you're looking at is the black color here is high-income countries. The red is middle income, and the peach here is low income. So you see, like a lot of the low-income countries, they don't live as long and they don't smoke as much. But obviously, again, the full truth is not being shown. Another good example, or how to identify, is to look at things that don't start at zero. If the plot of graph has changed proportion, which we saw with the number of years that were being shown, right? The proportion changed. The use of color, so looking at red. The final value plotted at the top of the graph, meaning it's not showing you everything before it, and a hidden y-axis. I like to share this example because this is a good one, because here's 8.6 and here's 8.8. And you can see that 8.8 is under the 8.6 here, so it's like, great. Like, again, not truthful. So I did a lot of talking, for better or worse. My final slide here is on resources. So I covered people, places, and things. These are the list of people that I think are phenomenal in terms of storytelling, the places to look for great storytelling resources, and then the things. So I mentioned Miro. I love using Miro. Using sticky notes and storyboarding is another great approach. Looking at AI, you can bounce things off of any LLM, which is great in terms of trying to steer you in the right direction or give you ideas. Good old paper and pencil is very useful. Voice applications, so if you want to, sometimes I have the best idea in my car or in the shower, so a voice application might be useful there. And then also having an inspiration board is a good way to keep track of your stories. Okay, so that was a lot. I spoke for a long time, so thank you for sticking with me. Any questions, comments, concerns about approaches, or I'm definitely anxious to hear other approaches that might work for you or might have worked for you.
I like how you have data is ugly and data is beautiful.
Yeah, data is ugly is actually where I found the lies. And data is beautiful is great inspiration. I should have put Tableau public too, because Tableau public is a great source of
Yeah, I like the
what could be.
checking out the news of the day to see like what's possible.
Yeah. Okay.
I think in relation to this, like if you're developing something, showing it to an audience that has no context of what you're presenting, just to see how they would react to it. For feedback kind of tells you a little bit how your story might resonate, can it stand on its own?
Yeah.
Method. So I'll do that with, whether it be a deck or dashboard development, I'll sometimes just find someone who doesn't have that insight into like what I'm doing, just to see how they'll react to it. Because it gives you feedback at least on where you need to craft your story better.
Yep. That's a very valid point. So Mark, I don't know if you can hear Mark, but what Mark was saying was bouncing it off of someone else is a really good approach in terms of understanding. It's kind of interesting because for our company, the company I work with, Action, I tend to think that we get a little verbose or fall into the trap of being too complex in the way that we speak. And we came around to the idea of like, if you can't explain it to your family, then it's too complex, right? So you need to boil it down and make it simpler. And a lot of times I do that too. Like, people ask me what I do. I say, make some pretty charts and graphs. But,
We're all guilty of that. I think it's find that level of engagement with your audience and what you're trying to pull it out. Are they engaged? If they're not, you go back to the drawing board and start over again.
yeah. People online, I see you out there. I just wanted to check in and see if you have any questions, concerns, anything that you'd like to add. So the other thing I was going to mention too, I know the second half of this was a Tableau doctor session. Did anyone bring anything that they want to share or work on? No? Everyone just came to see me talk for a while. Okay. Well, if there's nothing, thank you everyone for joining. Alexandra, Mario, Anthony, thank you. This is going to be recorded. I'll go ahead and share it this week. Okay. Again, enjoy check out the Tableau conference. We spoke about how it's fantastic and everything that's associated with that. If you want to check out those books, I shared the people but I'll also share the books as well. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. I hope you have a great day.